Hello, BI412 Isaiah Jeremiah class, Beulah Heights University. You should have completed last week, you should have completed the one-page paper on writing assignment on identifying the key elements in the call of Jeremiah and discuss their importance for understanding the actions of Jeremiah. You should have had a title page, Turabian format, bibliography page, and then at least one page of writing discussing those, the call narrative of Jeremiah, and of course the importance of and understanding the actions of Jeremiah. This week, week 3, make sure you read finish reading chapter 11, verse 18 through Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 18. And also read Brueggemann, pages 113 through 187. 113 through 187, 74 pages in this. And of course, in the Bible, in the Word of the Lord, you have 10 chapters to read. So, quite a bit of reading. Jeremiah, powerful book of the Bible. Verses 18 through 23, it talks about Jeremiah's life is threatened. Jeremiah chapter 12, Jeremiah begins to ask verses 1 through 4. He asks a lot of questions to the Lord. And verses 5 through verse 17, the Lord answers those questions. Verse 13, Jeremiah talks about the symbol of the linen sash. Jeremiah chapter 13, verse 12, he talks about the symbol of the wine bottles. Jeremiah chapter 13, verses 15 through 27, he discusses how pride proceeds captivity. Pride always leads to captivity. That's a message. If you're a preacher, you can preach on that. Chapter 14, he talks about the sword, the famine, pestilence. Chapter 14, verse 19, the people are pleading for mercy. Chapter 15, verses 1 through 9, the Lord will not relent. Chapter 15, verse 10, talks about Jeremiah's dejection. Chapter 15, verse 19, it talks about how the Lord reassures Jeremiah that there's hope. Chapter 16, it talks about Jeremiah's lifestyle message and how God's going to restore Israel. Chapter 17 talks about Judah's sin and the punishment. And of course, chapter 17, verse 8 through 18, Jeremiah is praying for deliverance for the Judah. And chapter 17, verses 19 through 27, there's the discussion on the hallowing the Sabbath day, how they should keep the Sabbath day. Chapter 18 is key this week, and I'll get back to it after I discuss the rest of our readings. Chapter 18 is the potter and the clay. Remember that, potter and the clay, verses 1 through verse 11. Jeremiah has a vision of the potter and the clay. And then Jeremiah 18, verse 12 through 17, God's warning is rejected. Chapter 18, verses 18 through 23, Jeremiah's persecuted. Chapter 19 talks about the sign of the broken flask. Chapter 20 is the word of God to Pashur. And chapter 20, verses 7 through 18, talks about Jeremiah's unpopular ministry. Isn't that something? One of the greatest, mightiest men of God. He was not very popular during his ministry, but to this day we respect a lot of his writings. This week, chapter 18, verses 1 through 11, we're talking about warnings and exhortation, disaster and comfort, lessons from the potter. How does Jeremiah chapter 18, verses 1 through 11 impact you? What does it mean for the nation of Israel and to us? So this week, we have a 250 original initial word post due by Thursday night, and then 225 word responses due by Sunday night. Remember, get the 250 word at least minimum in by Thursday night. The potter and the clay. The word of the Lord told Jeremiah, go down to the potter's house and I will show you something. The potter was making that clay, molding that clay. the clay would break. He would mold it back. It would fall. The potter would pick it back up. It was marred, but the potter kept on picking it back up and making it, creating it, caring for it, molding it. And he says this, as the Lord is the potter and we're the clay, so is Israel the clay and the Lord's the potter. So the Lord, he's our potter, we're the clay. The Lord is the potter, Israel's the clay. So what does it mean for us that he's the potter, we're the clay? What does it mean for Israel? The original context, he's speaking to Israel. So aren't you glad that he takes that clay and he makes it, molds it, it's marred at times, we get wounded at times, we get hurt, rejected, wounded, but he keeps on working on us and he keeps us on that potter's wheel. God bless. Make sure you get your discussion boards in this week. God bless. Bye.